Hello, speech. Glad you came to school today. If you haven't already, please open up your week 5 Schoology assignment. So that'll be easier for you to record answers that way. So here's what you can expect this week. So this week we're starting Unit 2, the informative speaking unit. So I'm going to go over today what you can expect, oh my, and also the schedule. I'm going to teach you today how to build a speech. So last unit, we learned the performing terms, PV legs. Today, you're going to learn the building terms, COVA or COVA. I'm also going to teach you today how to choose an informative speech topic and how to evaluate student examples. So that's going to get you through tasks 1 through 2 on your handout. Then I'm going to teach you how to research. This is tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach you how to research your informative speech, and that will bring you up to task 3 on your handout. That's what we're looking at this week. Mid-quarter is Friday, so make sure you have all of your work done and submitted. Make life a little bit easier for you. Here's what our schedule looks like. So this week, mid-quarter, doing the stuff I just talked about. Next week, I'm going to go over the rubric, what you can expect for grading this speech, and you're going to write the rough draft of your informative speech with references to the research you'll do this week. After week 6 is spring break, and then we come back for week 7, where you're going to learn more about using visuals, because this speech does have one visual in it, and then you're going to write your final draft, practice, and perform it. So we're performing this speech the week we come back from spring break, that week. Week 8 is going to be the reflection piece. So we'll reflect not only on your speech itself, but on the unit. How did you do? Week 8 will also start our 3rd unit, which is persuasive speaking. So you'll start the research for that in week 8. And I just got one vaccination already for the COVID-19. So I should be back around here somewhere, week 8 or 9. Not sure yet. Still have to schedule that second one. Week 9 is the last week of this quarter. And in week 9, you're going to write the rough draft of your persuasive speech. So really the informative unit is going to be the main one that's going to show on your report card for quarter 3. So that's how the schedule looks. This is basically the same, aside from reminding you that mid-quarter is Friday. Let's get your stuff in. If you need help, I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Wednesday for open office hour. Just click on this link and join me. I'll tell you a story tomorrow. So at this point, I'm going to give you your notes. So if you haven't already opened up your week 5, please do so, because this is where you're going to be writing these things. In fact, let's demonstrate that for you. So yours should look like mine. Got all formative grading this week. So first 5 points of formative is you're going to answer a prompt about COVA, and then you're going to watch 3 informative speech examples and evaluate them using PV leg terms. Other part of formative this week is your work for tomorrow, where you're going to research for your informative speech. So I would really suggest by tomorrow, you should know what your topic is. Luckily, today I'm teaching you how to do that. So as I teach you how to build your speech, you're going to show your thinking and learning right here. And I've done the first one for you to be an example. So that's where you'll put the 4 pieces of COVA and then a tip or a question to help for each. All right. Today, when you watch your informative speech examples, you're going to write what you're thinking here, and I will give you an example of that in today's lesson. And then tomorrow, when we start researching, that will go here. So let's talk first about how to pick a topic and what COVA means. So first off, picking an informative topic. For better life in your speech, it works best to pick something you really know a lot about or care a lot about. Some other questions that could help you pick your topic is, what do you wish more people knew. This could also include your pet peeves. So I wish more people knew about dog breeders versus adopting, whatever it is. Another question to consider in finding your informative topic is, how would life be better if people knew more about your topic? So in other words, you're trying to find something to teach us or to demonstrate. So that leads to this next one. What experiences in your life may be different from most people? For example, if you are bilingual, you could absolutely teach us some important phrases or words in your native language. Or let's say you're like me and you're growing up on a farm with a mechanic father. You could absolutely show us how to shift a truck or how to change oil, what have you. Just like with the last couple speeches, you get to pick. Do I want to perform in class or do I want to film it? Both are equally good. Couple ideas. So some popular ones, medical issues. If you have something unique about you or a unique condition, teach us about it. We're fascinated by what happens with people's bodies. It's a human thing. You could also research your future career and talk about that. You could pick, you could do a favorites speech. So my favorite band, and then tell us about it. Or you could do a couple favorite things. I want to give you some background on my favorite band, my favorite movie, blah, blah, blah. You could answer a question for your informative speech, like what states have the dumbest laws? That's one I enjoyed. And how do different cultures show the passage to adulthood? And like I said, you could show us some practical skills as well. Changing a tire, baking a rainbow cake, how to start working out. If you have expertise in something, teach us. I would suggest, as far as demonstration skills, make sure it's something that we need to have demonstrated. I've had students in the past ask, can I show how to make a peanut butter sandwich? I'm like, no, like that's not enough steps. And I think most people know how to do that. All right, so this next part is going to go directly in your handout. I'm going to teach you the 4 main things you're going to need anytime you build a speech for an audience. In other words, 4 aspects to think of as far as the audience goes whenever you make a speech. I called it COVA or COVA, like cover all of these things for an audience. So the 4 that we're going to talk about today are content, organization, visual aids, and audience. So I'm going to teach you specifically how do I do these things. So on one side here, you can see these are the building parts of a speech, and here's the performance parts, which you've already learned. All right, so the first thing you need to do in COVA is decide, what's my content? So what stuff do I need to help my audience? In other words, decide what the purpose of the speech is, in this case, inform, and decide what does my audience need? Now, in the case of speech class, you know who your audience is. It's your classmates and myself. But this means generally anytime you give a speech, think about the audience. What do they need to learn from me? So what info would most benefit my audience? And what do you want them to get out of your speech? So when I'm done telling them about Bengal cats, I want them to know more, or I want them to go out and advocate for Bengal cats, whatever it is. So I'm going to pause. You can write that first one, and then we'll move on. So now that I've decided about what my audience needs, so that first one would cover audience. Next, I got to build my content. Now that I know what I want for the audience, what do they need? So, what does the audience need for me to learn is a big part of informative speaking. Thinking about, okay, I don't need to cover how a normal high school day goes for my speech because I already know that. But if I were to give a speech about how high school works across the world, I'm going to have to probably give them back. You know what I mean? Another way to build content is research. And research isn't just looking up articles. It can be interviews. It can be video clips. It can absolutely be talking to an expert. So let's say I wanted to do this speech in high school, when I was in high school. If I wanted to talk about how to change your oil, I would absolutely talk to my dad for my research because he's an expert, he's a mechanic. All right. And that leads to my next point. Establish credibility by choosing credible research. So pick research that shows, hey, I know what I'm talking about, or that backs you up. Go beyond just Google when you cite a source. So I don't want to see on anyone's research, like, where'd you get this? Google? No, no. You started with Google. Where did it take you? Same thing with Wikipedia. Wikipedia is amazing for research. However, it's not the best one to cite because it can change. It can be edited. That's one of the things that makes it wonderful is it gets edited so the information is current, but it means it's not the best source to cite. So if you use Wikipedia, awesome. Find one of the many other places that Wikipedia recommends you get the info and use that, cite that. So I would suggest starting at Google and Wikipedia, but then moving beyond there when it comes to citing sources. For example, if I'm giving a speech about gun safety, I'm going to sound way more credible if I have information from instance, the state licensing department on guns, on weapons, versus lovemygun.com. I don't know if that's a real site. It could be. Then I need to organize. So far we've covered C is for content, A at the bottom is for audience, the O in COVA is organize. Once I've found information, I have to organize it so that my audience can learn. So really the best thing about informative speeching, wow. The best thing about informative speaking is you already know quite a bit about it. You listen to informative speeches all day long. You have how many classes a day? 7? Yeah, you know what works and what doesn't when it comes to organizing content. So here's some questions to ask to get to that point. To teach well, so you got to decide of the info I found, what stuff is the most useful and what should I cut? I'm not going to require how many times you reference research in your speech. I'm going to tell you that you should. So how do I best organize it? Organize it so it makes sense to you. That makes it easier to present. So I would suggest having weak points in the middle so that you start and end strong. And if you keep finding the same main idea in your research, that is absolutely some content you should include that tells you it's important to that topic. So here's some examples of how to organize content. Most speeches follow the same organization pattern as an essay. Not the exact same writing, but the same pattern. So you have an intro where you tell them what you're going to say, tell them what you're going to tell them, then the body, you tell them, and then the intro, tell them what you've told them. That's the basic steps to help someone remember what you've said. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Tell them what you told them. Remind them. Okay, the final step of COVA, the V is for visuals. So most people are visual learners. Most. In fact, they say about 8% of what we say is what people pay attention to when we're talking. The rest of it is body language and visuals. That's what people focus on time and time again. So a couple of tips here. And unfortunately, because my slides have to work for all learners, synchronous and asynchronous, my slides are not the best example of this. So first off, if you're using visuals, if you have slides, are they easy to use? So don't crowd them. So typically, if I was using these slides just to present, I would have less words. Less is better. Make sure you're picking fonts that people can see and can read. Sometimes people get like a script font on there and no one can read it. It works better to have one clear visual that you describe versus a collage versus several. Use key words when you are presenting. Put them on your visuals. So let's say I want to use this picture, which is a picture from the Opium Wars, Britain and America fighting over that. So if I wanted to use this picture and have keywords, I could put Opium Wars, what's in the jar, that kind of thing. Just enough on the slide to keep my audience engaged, but so they aren't reading word for word. Make sure that your visuals don't look sloppy, because that kills your credibility. You could have the best speech in the world, but it doesn't look as good if your visuals don't look good. If you're going to use a visual or a video for a visual, you absolutely can. Just make sure you have it queued up to the right part, that you know exactly where you need to go with it, and keep the video short. If you have a 2 to 5 minute speech, 2 minutes of it should not be the video, maybe 30 seconds at most. All right. And then the biggest thing when you're building a speech is don't assume, teach. Don't assume your audience automatically gets it. Teach it, make sure they get it. So that is the first part. That's task 1. So I'm going to pause here so you can write your prompts for task 1. So you should have COVA and then a tip or a question for each. So I'm going to pause so you can get that. And then we're going to talk about examples. So for this next part, you should see a copy of your Schoology on the screen. So here is where you're going to find examples. So click on week 5. I'm right here where it says informative speech examples. There they are. If you have trouble getting the sound to work, I've had some students say you should open up the videos in Notability, or that you have to click on them twice. When I tested them, they worked. So if you can't get sound, you can still evaluate them. So you're going to pick today to kind of see, to help you brainstorm your topic and to help you see some examples of informative speaking. You're going to pick any 3 of these. Entirely up to you which ones. So these are from a couple of years ago, and any example you see from me, I'm using with student permission. I would never take your work and just be like, yoink, that's for me. So pick 3 and watch them. Then what you're going to do is you're going to write the title of what you watch. So if it was pig farming, you write pig farming or showing pigs. Then a couple of sentences evaluating the speech. Decide whether or not it's informative. Tell me why. So I think this is informative because. And then you should have a sentence telling me how well the speaker used PV legs. So how were they poised? Did they have life in their voice? How was their pace? All of those things. Okay, so you're going to do that for 3 of those. Let me show you. So here's an example of how this would look completed. On an example, it doesn't exist. So please don't write this as your answer, because I've had students do that and it's confusing. All right. So let's say I watched one on baking cherry bars. I would write baking cherry bars or cherry bars. And then here's a sentence explaining whether or not it's informative. So this was informative. All the ingredients and steps are shown clearly. And then here's PV legs. Speaker used voice well by speaking clearly into the mic when recording. Gestures used in showing how to prepare steps. So I've talked about PV legs there. And that is how you do that. I've also included for you a review of what each PV legs term means in case you didn't remember from last week. So that is how we'll end our class hour today. You folks will get to watch those examples and then complete task 1 and 2 on your handout. Tomorrow, we're going to work on research. So today, task 1 and 2, and figure out what your topic is, because then tomorrow when we research, it'll be easier for you. All right, go for it. I'm in the meet if you have questions.